Welcome to Countdown Election 2020, an emergency hearing in Athens next week, and it's all about the state's new voting machines. I'm Skylar Nicholson. We'll have a story coming up for you about everything you need to know about misinformation on social media and how it can affect elections, and what you need to know about it. Now, state election officials will be in Athens next week for an emergency hearing. The issue to determine whether the Athens-Clarke County Board of Elections violated state regulations when it decided not to use the state's new voting machines in the upcoming presidential preference primary. The hearing takes place Wednesday, March 11th at 10 a.m. at the Georgia Center for Continuing Education. Now, this is a document that the board should be prepared to answer the hard questions regarding its decision not to use electronic ballot markers for the upcoming vote. Now, the state of Georgia spent more than $100 million on the new voting machines. And we have team coverage for you. First, Grady News Source reporter Amanda Regan explains why Athens-Clarke County says no to the new voting machines. Then, Gigi Kwan shows you how another county is singing the praises of the new machines. Athens-Clarke County spent nearly $1.4 million for the voting machines that they won't be using. Now they'll have to add another $30,000 of your taxpayer dollars to pay for the paper ballots. Amanda Regan begins our team coverage with the details.
The law allows us as workers to observe the voting process, so it was a possibility for us to observe, but just probably wasn't enough privacy.
Charlotte Sosby, the director of the Athens-Clarke County Board of Elections, said she did receive one email from a voter saying that they thought their privacy was compromised.
Yesterday, there was someone who stated via email that they felt that their ballot wasn't private.
The voting stations are required to keep one of the new voting machines for those who need the visual assistance.
According to the pilot that was done in Cobb County, there was the need to have one ballot marking device, which we do. We have one here.
Now, in other counties surrounding Athens-Clarke County, the story is a little bit different. Gigi Kwan shows you that Barrow County officials like the new electronic voting machines. Biden takes the lead and two more candidates drop from the race. Trump is shocked that we're not talking about Super Tuesday more.
Can't believe it. No questions on the... Thank you.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Leslie Cash is the elections assistant at the Barrow County Board of Elections office. Her experience with the new voting machine?
Everything's good.
Voter Vernon Oliver agrees with Cash.
You know who you're voting for, so you can't cheat on that.
Some voters might have concerns about the new voting machine, but Barrow County dare not. Let me show you why. The new electronic voting system is surrounded by a plastic barrier that goes to allow secrecy when voting.
Nobody can see what you do.
Even when they're standing next to each other, they said they weren't able to peek through. The election assistant Leslie Cash also told me that it hasn't been an issue so far. It works smoothly, and they do not plan to change it back to the old way of voting.
Everybody's not complained. No problem so far. Everything's good.
Biden takes the lead and two more candidates drop from the race. Trump is shocked that we're not talking about Super Tuesday more.
Can't believe it. No questions on the election. This has to be good.
So let's talk about it. Joe Biden is on top after Super Tuesday, winning 10 states, including Texas. And Bernie Sanders, well, he felt close behind, even after landing coveted California votes. Well, this is a big switch for the Democratic Party after his success in Nevada and New Hampshire. They expected Sanders to take the rest. And Elizabeth Warren and Michael Bloomberg, well, they're out. Bloomberg announced his official support for Biden. Now, with this backing and a big win this week, Biden is ready to fight for his coveted spot.
We need a president who can fight, but make no mistake about I can fight. But look, we need as badly, someone who can heal.
And he's got some help. Here he is with wife Jill taking on an animal rights activist. Now we're following the campaign trail, and the next stop is here in Georgia on March 24th for the Democratic primary. This week for races in the 2020 elections for both state and federal offices. Now every seat in the Georgia House of Representatives and Senate is up for grabs, including all 14 U.S. House seats and the state's 2 U.S. Senate seats. Now, among notable visitors, U.S. Rep. Doug Collins, U.S. Senator Kelly Loeffler, who are both competing with each other to fill the remainder of retired U.S. Senator Johnny Isakson's term. Now, United States Rep. John Lewis, U.S. Reps. Buddy Carter, Sanford Bishop, Hank Johnson, Lucy McBath, Jody Heiss, and Barry Loudermilk, and David Scott. They were all there. Now, hopeful newcomers lined up the halls to prepare to challenge for a seat in power, including Teresa Tomlinson and John Ossoff, among many. Now, this is just the first big step in the 2020 Georgia state elections. Now, there's a move to do away with so-called free speech zones at Georgia college campuses in the House of Representatives. Now, there are specifically designated areas on campuses where people may freely exercise their First Amendment rights. But after one organization filed lawsuits claiming that these rights were violated in these spaces, State Senator William Ligon has introduced a measure that would leave the entire campus open for public demonstration. Now, it's a move that has both supporters and detractors.
I could not imagine coming to a university where this is allowed on a daily basis anywhere and everywhere.
Brianna Hayes does not like the idea of doing away with designated forums at the University of Georgia. The third-year student says that the proposed law seems more focused on protecting outside groups than students' rights to both free speech and access to an undisturbed education.
There are students who are concerned and who have been deeply hurt and disturbed by certain groups that have come on this campus within the past year and have intimidated a lot of students. I remember that I was walking through Tate, a very busy area, last year, and remember being afraid.
This is the event Hayes is talking about. In 2019, a group called Created Equal set up this demonstration in a designated forum in the middle of campus. Brittany Miles remembered the group's display stirred controversy. The proposed law bothers her.
I feel like they really protect the organizations, the outside organizations, versus its students, such as the GAP Project and the abortion people that came last semester. I felt like it was very attacking.
The president of the organization says the attacks were on them and their display.
So it's clear a bed sheet covering someone's display is not a First Amendment protected activity. And the university needs to step in and tell those people to take down the sheets, or at least move to a distance to which it's not censoring or prohibiting us from reaching the students that pass by. And so, I mean, that's a lawsuit ready to happen. If the university does not intervene and move the students back, then they don't respect free speech.
Created Equal has filed multiple lawsuits across the country against universities, and most recently here in Georgia, threatening a lawsuit with Georgia State in 2019. Senator Ligon says this bill could relieve legal tension between parties on campuses.
In the states that have passed this bill, the lawsuits against universities over free speech issues have stopped. And you know, we've had those recently in Georgia, and there's several that are pending now, and I understand there may be others under consideration.
Some students, like Jack Henry, believe that free speech zones allow for campuses to maintain order and structure for maximum efficiency for all students during their everyday lives.
I think that the way things run right now as it pertains to free speech on campus is efficient, it's effective, and it also makes sure that every single group is having their voice heard, even the controversial ones.
But other students believe opening up additional spaces on campus can help more voices be heard. Jack Mallon, a freshman, says that he feels like he has not been able to adequately voice his opinion on campus, and that these free speech zones have made it difficult for his organization, Turning Point, to be able to operate amongst student life.
This is very limiting, and for an organization like our university that prides itself on a diverse set of opinions, I think that this is quite limiting and kind of short-sighted and doesn't value the opinions of everyone in the marketplace of ideas.
Trey Lance, another member of the group, agrees.
It would also make it where these reservations would no longer exist. We wouldn't have to reserve a table in a certain amount of time. We would be able to pick any space on campus that's not blocking traffic, set up a table, set up an event, set up a display, and be able to speak about our group and recruit people for membership. And I think that would be amazing.
The bill is modeled after the Forum Act and has passed in 17 other states, mostly by Republican legislators. Now, it's been passed by the Senate Judiciary Committee and is waiting for a vote on the Senate floor. Misinformation on social media can be hard to identify. Reporters Yash Bika and Chelsea Perry will have more on the effects of social media on elections and how to combat false information.
Okay, so we drowned the fire,
Yep.
stirred it, Drowned it again, and now just feel if it's cold.
Yeah.
Cool.
Smokey just gave me a bear hug.
I know. Already posted it.
Take a look under your bed. Find stuff under there? What about jobs? No? Now try your closet. Still no jobs? Just more stuff? Well, you really have both. See, stuff is defined as household articles considered as a group. Sometimes this stuff is no longer needed. Wait, no longer needed? That can't be right. Because remember those jobs you were looking for? Those are really needed. And they're the stuff inside your stuff. Our job is to unlock those jobs. And it starts when you donate your stuff to your local Goodwill. Here's how we do it. When you donate to Goodwill, we sell your stuff to provide job training for people right here in your community. So just by teaming up with Goodwill, you help create jobs. And isn't that worth parting with the leftover keytar from your 80s cover band? Goodwill. Donate stuff, create jobs.
Maybe you can make retirement happen. After all, you made this vacation happen.
Double points with every purchase?
Cleverly merging promotions.
Love it.
Cross-referencing travel sites. And booking all your flights with those...
Vouchers. I got us bumped.
They were like, oh. But now they're like... Aloha. You aced this vacation. Now get the tips you need to get on track at aceyourretirement.org.
It can be easy to find false information on social media platforms. Grady News Source journalist Yash Bika has more on how misinformation can affect elections.
Misinformation on social media, it's a problem. Has been since the 2016 presidential election. According to Dr. Jason Anastasopoulos, an assistant professor of political science at the University of Georgia, there's a good reason why.
When you encounter a piece of news that you have a strong emotional reaction to, I think the best thing to do is to realize, well, Facebook, Twitter, whoever, they've given me that story so that I would have that emotional reaction.
To find out more, check out my article on GradyNewsSource.com. Now joining me is Grady News Source reporter Chelsea Perry. Chelsea, you went to an event hosted by an organization that trains journalists on how to fight disinformation. What was that like?
Well, not only was it a really interesting event, but it was important as well for journalists to know how to educate the public on misinformation. Social media is a normal part of our everyday lives, but the fun in social sharing is a double-edged sword. What's true? What's not? And how do you tell the difference? For journalists to be able to tell you what's going on, especially in this political season, finding and telling the truth matters.
I like to talk about people having a lizard brain.
And in her job, Claire Wardle talks about it a lot in rooms like this one.
I am the US director of First Draft, and First Draft is a non-profit that helps newsrooms basically navigate this polluted information environment.
Because with tools like this, and a contentious election coming up, the opportunity for misinformation to get out there is real. It's why Wardle and her team are here at the University of Georgia's Grady College of Journalism and Mass Communication.
And we do trainings, we do research, and we do projects with journalists in the field.
This room is packed with professionals and student journalists, all learning ways to combat misinformation. It isn't easy, because people are people.
Really drawn as humans to things like fear and emotional and visceral reactions. We're not very good at kind of the rational thinking piece. And so our brains are so overwhelmed right now because of all of the information coming into our smartphones that we're just much more likely to remember the bad stuff than we are the good.
Wardle adds that right now there's not a lot of information out here, yet. But
it's still early days. It's going to be a very long year.
Chelsea Perry, Grady News Source.
Georgia is one of 8 states in the country with relatively strict photo ID laws. When you go to vote on election day, you must bring some form of photo ID, whether that's a passport, driver's license, or in some case, a student ID. Grady News Source reporter Lily McCarran joins us in the studio now to talk more about some of those complications. So what exactly is the problem? Don't these various form of photo IDs, do they give us other options?
They do give us options, but the problem is that this issue can specifically impact people who identify as transgender.
There's a possibility that the person's name, photo, or gender on their ID does not match how they physically present themselves when they go to the polls. This can confuse poll workers who are trained to verify identity through the photo ID law.
Now, if you present your photo ID and you're denied by a poll worker, how else can you vote?
You always have the right to request a provisional ballot, so if you're turned away, don't leave without filling in a provisional ballot. Also, absentee voting does not require you to show photo ID.
Now, what measures can you take to ensure that you aren't denied when you go to the polls?
Take an updated ID photo before voting. This is the simplest way to ensure that your photo ID corresponds to your gender performance. If you want to find out more on how this will impact the more than 37,000 voter-eligible trans people in Georgia, you'll find my story at GradyNewsSource.com.
Now, thank you, Lily, again for joining us. If you want to learn more, go to GradyNewsSource.com.
Are your children in the right car seat for their age and size? Is the seat supposed to be forward-facing or rear-facing? Did they move to a booster seat too soon? It may be too late to check when you're on the road. Fortunately, you're on the couch. Car crashes are a leading killer of children 1 to 13. Don't think you know. Know you know.
I'm a single mother, and I was the main one working, so I never thought that I could go back to school, you know? My sister, my mother, everybody wanted to help me with my kids. I could not have gotten my diploma without my family.
Find free adult education classes near you at finishyourdiploma.org.
It's a beautiful day out here. Sunny today with light breezes, giving way to clouds in the afternoon. We could see some light precipitation to moderate precipitation later on, followed by powerful storm-like conditions. 90 miles per hour winds are expected. Authorities are asking everyone, stay indoors. Come on, that's it. Let's go.
He worked in the Bush administration and has more than 20 years of experience in public affairs and political campaigns. And he's a Harvard Law grad. Joining me now, an esteemed professor here at the University of Georgia, Dr. Joe Watson.
Thanks, Skylar.
Thank you so much for joining us today. Now, before we dive into the discussion, let's take a look at a quick highlight of this past contentious week in politics, where candidates were battling it out for delegates in 14 states and 1 U.S. territory.
Folks, this is a team. We need your help.
We have found that leader in Vice President, soon to be President, Joe Biden.
And in Joe Biden, we have that man.
Today, I am ending my campaign and endorsing Joe Biden for president.
From day one, we have been taking on the establishment. And let me be very clear, it is no surprise. They do not want me to become president.
There is a massive effort trying to stop Bernie Sanders. That's not a secret to anybody in this room.
Super Tuesday marked as the most significant day of voting in the party's 2020 presidential nomination fight, and the race has now consolidated. It is now a two-man contest. So, Dr. Watson, what does this mean for the outcome of the continuance of the race?
Well, I think it's clearly, as you've indicated in your question, it's now a two-person race between Senator Sanders and former Vice President Joe Biden. So it's consolidated. We've seen other folks in the wake of their performance in Super Tuesday come out of the race and endorse other candidates, and so now it's down to a two-person race, and we have a much better idea of who of what the outcome is going to be for the primary.
And now, why are these delegates so important? What power do they hold?
Well, you know, when you vote in a primary, you vote for delegates for a candidate, and so those delegates ultimately will go to the convention, and if it's particularly close, it will determine what the final nomination process looks like. So the delegates are everything, and you've got to have a majority of the delegates either outright to win the nomination, and if you don't, if you only have a plurality, then it could be a contested convention.
Now, what role did Texas and California play in winning over delegates for the major candidates? Now, was the outcome a surprise?
Absolutely. I think that Vice President Biden outperformed expectations. He came out of South Carolina, that victory, with a substantial amount of momentum, and it propelled him to victories across the South and even into the Northeast, winning states like Massachusetts and Maine that one would think would have been more favorable territory for Sanders, who is from the Northeast. Sanders did win California, which was the expectation, but Biden performed well there, and the surprise was Biden's substantial victory in Texas.
And President Trump, how did he fare in all of this?
Well, I think that the reality is that President Trump, in all likelihood, would fare better in an election between Senator Sanders and himself, and so the likelihood that Joe Biden is now the presumptive front runner in the race is bad news for the president, as he will be a more formidable candidate in the general election than Senator Sanders would be.
And now Warren, we had multiple candidates drop out this past week. She is the most recent one. Could we see her as a VP candidate possibly for Biden? There has been talks. What are your thoughts on that?
I think that, all female senators would be on the short list. So I would certainly think she would be on the short list. But there are a lot of factors that go into picking a vice president, and that comes down to what they bring to the table. Politically, do they fulfill a wing? If Biden, as a more moderate candidate, will likely benefit from having someone more progressive on his ticket. I'm sure he would like to have a woman on his ticket in his set as much, and so I'm sure she would be in the mix, but I don't think that she is necessarily a favorite in that regard.
Now, our final question, what is next for Sanders and Biden?
Well, they go to Super Tuesday Part 2, which is next Tuesday the 10th, where we will have contests in states like Idaho and Michigan and Mississippi, where we will see this race play out. Washington State is one of those states, and Bernie Sanders is expected to do very well there. But the rest of the territory looks to be more favorable for former Vice President Biden. So I think the race goes on. It is a two-person race, but it is now Vice President Biden's race to lose. He is the presumptive front runner, and unless we have big surprises coming out, he looks to be on track to win the nomination.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Watson, for joining us today. The Georgia presidential preference primary is coming up soon. Now, next, we will have some more information regarding important dates you want to mark down on your calendar.
There's a lot of fear in coming back to school. I'm a 40-year-old man that walked in there to get his high school diploma. It was very hard for me, but one of the teachers was Miss Araceli. She gave me direction. Every single time I had a question, she'll put down whatever she's doing and she'll sit there with you until you get it. 50% of getting your high school diploma is walking through those doors. The other 50% is doing the work.
Find free adult education classes near you at finishyourdiploma.org.
Is your family in need of more quality time together?
Hello, I'm Dr. Spruce. Nature is best enjoyed together. So bring the whole family to discover all the bonding and stress-reducing benefits parks and forests have to offer. Visit discovertheforest.org and trade in phone time for family time.
Birds, squirrels, chipmunks, grass, worms, bugs, trees, rocks, and other objects in nature cannot talk. If you'd like to have a conversation while visiting nature, you will need to bring humans along. We strongly recommend starting with your family.
Na 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 na, I love you so. I love you, I love you. La 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 la, la 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 la.
We're here.
Yay!
It's a short drive from your neighborhood to your naturehood. To find a neighborhood park or green space near you, visit discovertheforest.org.
Some important dates to keep in mind. Georgia didn't partake in the Super Tuesday wave of elections this year, which means it's holding its own presidential preference primary. Advanced voting is currently underway, and the last day for advanced voting is March 20th. Mark your calendars for March 24th, which will be when the actual Georgia primary will take place. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. That's all we have for Countdown Election 2020. Now, we won't have a show next Friday as the University of Georgia will be closed for spring break, but be sure to visit our website at gradynewssource.com for more news for Northeast Georgia. I'm Skylar Nicholson. Have a good night.
Grady News Source is a student production of the Grady College of Journalism and Mass Communication at the University of Georgia, which is solely responsible for its contents. Views expressed do not represent those of the administration nor the Board of Regents at the University System of Georgia.
What to expect when you're expecting
Like here.
a teenager.
Today, I'm going to show you how to teen-proof your home. First step, hide the car keys, preferably somewhere they would never look. Challenges will come up. Be ready for them. Hi, honey.
Ready for the... Mom, you don't use mannequins in the mannequin challenge.
You don't have to know it all to be a perfect parent. Thousands of teens in foster care will love you just the same.
Did you hear about the pony with a sore throat? He was a little horse. Can I tell you a cat joke? Just kidding. Why couldn't the Why was the basketball court all wet? Why? Because the players kept dribbling all over it. Where do cats go on vacation? New York.
Did you know parking over tall, dry grass can spark a wildfire?
Only you can prevent wildfires.
We'd do anything for kids. Yet 1 in 6 children in the U.S. struggle with hunger. Help end childhood hunger near you. Learn how at feedingamerica.org.
Start a story. Adopt at theshelterpetproject.org.
I love
Can we get strawberries?
Okay.